Welcome to Messages of Hope. I'm your host, Jill Lublin. Tonight we have a fabulous group of guests for you. It's called Project Read, and we have, well, many people here, but I'm going to start with introducing you to Kathleen Endaya. She is the director of Project Read. And would you please be so kind to introduce our other guests?
Yes, and thank you so much for having us here today, Jill. This is one of my staff members, and Dana, why don't you tell them what you do at Project Read?
Sure. So my name is Dana Hartman, and I am the coordinator of the adult programming at Project Read. So I coordinate the tutors and learners of the community in the Redwood City area, and also the inmates in the San Mateo County jails, the tutoring program that we do there.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
And the program has grown so much, and there's been such a need that we've partnered also with the National AmeriCorps Project. And that's how Angel came to be with us. So Angel, why don't you tell them a little bit about what you do?
Sure, Kathy. My name is Angel Eckel, and I'm actually a full-time AmeriCorps volunteer with Project Read, spending my year of service working specifically with the adult literacy program and helping Dana coordinate the inmate program.
Marvelous. So you cover quite a bit here, but I want to start with the problem, we'll call it, of literacy. Project Read, I'm assuming, and I happen to know, is really about helping literacy and kind of, I know you have a certain goal about really wiping it out in certain areas, but tell me, why literacy? Why reading?
Because what I very quickly found out about 22 years ago when my children started going to school is without the fundamental ability to read, you really have no freedom, you have no independence, and you have no hope in life. Everything is so based on that, and your freedom is based on that. When this literacy campaign from the state of California was available through libraries throughout California, I was very interested and started actually as just a part-time employee, but it grabbed me right away, and I knew it was big, and I knew it was changing lives. And it grew from an adult literacy program to a totally intergenerational program.
So you work with all ages?
All ages.
But let's back up even more. What's the problem with literacy in America today?
I think that it's very, very complicated, and I think we in error like to point fingers and blame schools or teachers or funding, when I think what we haven't realized is things are changing and there's much more demand on our students and our adults to read and write. Technology has taken us to a completely different level, and you're really left behind.
Well, how many people can't read or write? Let's just start there.
The last statistics that I read just in our correctional facilities alone, on average, 89% of incarcerated people have reading and writing problems. They are functionally illiterate.
That's amazing. You know, we don't think about that a lot, I don't think, in our general daily lives, those of us who take it for granted to a certain extent that we can read. And so what about this project grabbed you? You said it grabbed you.
Well, when I met an 84-year-old gentleman who had worked all his life for the school district as a maintenance person and had raised children and put them through college, and he came in one day and he had never spoken this to anyone because he was so intelligent, had so many ingenious ways of hiding it, but he was non-literate. He really could not read nor write, but he absolutely wanted to read to his grandchildren. He didn't want to miss out on that. And we matched him with a volunteer tutor that we train in the community, and they worked together for 2 years, and one day I was walking by their table and they were reading a novel together.
Oh.
And just the stories.
At 84.
At 84. And he comes back and volunteers and helps others now. So it's really done that 360 and come full circle. And it was just so heartwarming. It's also been just amazing what we have found with the breakthroughs with some of the incarcerated people that have committed crimes and have anger management problems. And what we find out is through some of the programs, which I'll let Dana explain to you, that we have in our correctional facilities, they are able to sit down together, those that can read, helping those that can't. It's a peer tutoring program. And we also have book clubs and poetry. And with this one gentleman who really had expressive language problems, he just couldn't get his thoughts out, and it boiled over and he became angry. When he started to be able to read and then start writing poetry, he could express himself. He told us that it healed his soul.
Oh.
And he was just looking forward to being a much different person in life.
Wow, and so you go in the jails. So tell me about that piece. What's that like?
Well, going in the jails for me is a really rewarding experience. More than rewarding, it's really emotional. And every single day we get to witness people changing their lives.
What's emotional about it?
You know what? It's funny because it can be the littlest things,
Like
but
what?
you see their self-esteem just rising. We had the opportunity to do a collaborative project with the book club that we started and a high school on Treasure Island. And what we did together was we read the same reading materials, and myself and the high school teacher passed critical literacy essays back and forth between the students, where they were asking each other questions about the things that we were reading.
The prisoners to
and
the
high
students.
school students,
Oh, that's
right?
wonderful.
And what we found was that the high school students were saying, this is the reason why I'm coming to school, is to be able to participate in this project. And you know, one of the inmates one day stopped me before we went into the class, and he said, Dana, I've never felt this motivated in my entire life to do anything. And so, you know, moments like that, I feel happen very often in our program.
Were you afraid when you first walked in?
You know, I was slightly overwhelmed when I first walked in, but I'm not afraid, no.
And so why are you doing this? I mean, what prompts you to bring reading to inmates?
Well, I really feel that that we can change the world, and that inmates are actually going to be a huge part of how we do that, because they have the answers. The answers are actually inside, within their hearts, and they're just waiting for somebody or something to help them to expose this. I mean, they are agents of change.
Yes, they are. I would agree. And I remember reading a poem. I think, Angel, you have the poem, right? About that an inmate actually wrote.
Actually, Dana
Oh,
has
you
that
have
one.
it. Oh, good. Could you just read that part about the message of hope? I just love that, what you had sent to me.
Sure. So actually, this was written by a young man who was in our program for about 2 years. So he was in the book club, and he was also a tutor. And so he's just a really special person. And I'll just read a couple of lines from his poem.
How old is he?
He is about 21 years old right now, 22.
And do you know what his crime was?
No,
Okay.
yeah, we don't ask. So, so the title is From the Cradle to the Grave, and his poem says, when I first saw light, when I was handed to my mom, when my father named me, when I was born, I was hope. When I got my first A, walked in honor roll parades, won championships and tourneys, when my father got up from the gurney, I had hope. When Malcolm and Martin were shot, when speaking your mind would get you knocked, when people gave up the struggle, when my name became 113201, I lost hope. But when I see 100 years turned into a program, when adversity is turned to triumph, when I see light at the end of the tunnel, I wake up to a better tomorrow, I find hope.
Oh, that is beautiful. Please thank him on our behalf.
I
That's
will.
really special. And what I'm hearing is that you have these programs that bring literacy to the inmates, that involve students, right? And all age groups. And I think that is so powerful. Now tell us, for you, yeah, please.
Well, what I was going to say, Jill, is you asked what motivates us. We see wonderful programs in our school district, in our correctional facilities, in place, but there are people that cannot participate in them because they do not have the reading skills to really understand the vocabulary and what's being said to them, let alone what they need to read. And Jill has a wonderful project that she's working in that is also about hope and about changing lives, that she does with our program as well as at a state facility. But it was something that, and Jill told me as we were talking the other day, that really, I think, opened up something in my mind where I really understood a bit of the problem. And I'm going to let Jill tell you that.
That was a great setup. I loved it.
Well, what Kathy's speaking about really does connect why education is so important and why literacy is at the heart of that, because a lot of times what we hear, especially around criminal justice and corrections in this country, is the importance of rehabilitating the person so that we can bring them back to society as a whole person. But in talking with Kathy and also in doing this work with literacy inside the prisons and jails, we see that it's not about rehabilitation, because the prisoners were not whole when they came into the program. They weren't whole, they were broken because they did not have the skills to be able to read, to be able to write, to be able to functionally participate in their communities in a positive way. And so we sort of look at it as a model of habilitation. How can, through education with literacy at the heart, can we help people become critical participants in their own lives and give them the skills so that they can create those positive environments, whether it's in prison, with their families, or back in the community?
Well, I know also that you do read certain books, right? And one thing I had heard that interested me quite a bit about your project was a book you were reading on forgiveness. And then there was something about how this book on forgiveness supported a prisoner to truly forgive, to look at his crime in a different light. Will you share that story with me?
Sure.
And of course our viewers.
Yes, yes. So we read a book about a father's journey from murder to forgiveness, how his son was murdered and he was able to overcome that devastation and find in his heart, in his spirit, forgiveness for the perpetrator. And we read this book in the book club, and the men just connected to the story so much. For the first time, they were able, through their ability to read, be able to really look at life from a different point of view. And this compelled them to be able to find empathy and be able to take a look at their own lives and realize how much strength it took for a father to overcome this tragedy, and how they too can be strong and, you know, learn how to connect with people and learn how to heal through sharing stories.
Do you remember some particular comments they said as they were reading? You're right there with them, right? So what are some particular comments that touched you that you heard?
Well, I can just remember one of the participants saying, I feel empathy. I feel empathy. I have never in my life experienced another person's emotions or been able to feel anything but what I feel. Actually, I don't really feel I've ever been able to feel before. But now I could truly say that I feel empathy.
Wow.
And the men in the book club actually ended up writing letters to the author. And the author responded by coming and speaking to the entire pod of the San Mateo County Jail, which is about 100 people. So they were really able to see how, you know, they can make a change, how they can make a difference. What they say, what they talk about matters to somebody enough so that they would actually come and visit us.
And that they would care.
And that they would care,
I'm thinking, Kathleen, something you said earlier about, you know, that's 86% you said?
89.
89, even worse. But 89% of people entering jails are illiterate or have a literacy issue, we'll just say. And can you imagine what that must feel like inside as teachers are reading or they can't be included in anything? And then I would bet the cycle begins rather early, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's what happened with our program. One thing that the California Library Literacy Campaign was really very definite about was that our programs be student-centered, and so we would meet the goals and what the learners wanted. And we got to a certain point very quickly after about a year of having this program where a community member would be tutoring another community member, and it becomes this partnership that does so much and gives hope to both parties, and both parties learn from each other. But what we realized is our learners wanted us to help their children. So we had to kind of look backwards, and we had to start helping the children if we were going to not have another generation of adult low literate or non-literate adults.
Interesting. So what you're saying is by working with the people you particularly are working with, now it can affect multiple generations, right, within their own families.
Right. And that's how we got into the correctional facilities. As we followed parents or siblings, older siblings that needed help, they asked us to actually go into the correctional facility, and we started there. But one thing that I think